Good morning, Sutherland students. Happy Monday, April 27th. Today we're going to begin by first placing our hands over our heart, taking a deep breath in here, and letting all that air exhale out of our mouth. One more deep breath in, sealing your lips, breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in your creativity and breathing out your creativity for others. Today we're going to be weaving on a homemade loom. So I wanted to share how I made my loom first, using paintbrushes that I found in my studio, and I used rubber bands and some t-shirt yarn to tie them together. So when I first did it, I just used rubber bands and it was very flexible. So the t-shirt helped to keep it in place, and it looks like it needs to be tightened just a little bit. And then other things that you may need: scissors, different types of paper, recycled, not necessarily recycled bag, but a plastic bag that we can cut up into pieces. Even things like painter's tape that you can fold over so it's no longer sticky and it becomes a nice piece of material to weave with. So when we work today, be as creative as you want with the materials that you find from around the house to use this. I'm gonna start, we've created the loom, and now we're gonna create the warp lines. And if we can remember from paper weaving last week, those warp lines are gonna be those vertical lines. And I have a lot of this t-shirt yarn. You can make it. There are a lot of great tutorials on YouTube finding how to make t-shirt yarn. If you are kindergarten and first, second grade, you definitely want a parent or an older family member to help you to create the t-shirt yarn, because it can be a little challenging. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this. And when I want to create these warp lines, this is a lot of material, so I'm going to hold this in my hand and just sort of wrap it around. And I'm going to do that twice. So I'll end up with 6 lines. I'm going to go up and move my hand out of the way. And I'm going to wrap it around once, twice. So I'm going to throw it through until it gets a little bit shorter. So I'm going to come back down, wrap it one more time, space those out, go up to the top. Now my yarn's getting a little bit less troublesome here. I'm going to go wrap it around. When there's a lot of yarn, it's sort of all over the place and hard to keep track of. So I'm down at the bottom. I'm going to wrap it around this paintbrush at the bottom twice. Oops. And when I get to the top, I'm going to pull this and I'm going to tie it off. Now, these don't have to be permanent. So if you are weaving on something, let's say you found 4 rulers in your house and you need to use those rulers eventually, that's fine. Just, you can pull this apart later. Maybe just take a photo and document it. Not all art is something that's meant to last forever. So it's okay if you just do this as an experiment or as a process and just see how the process works out for you. So I'm just going to kind of tuck this off to the side. I want to not cut it just in case I decide to start over. So here's my my loom with my warp lines, and now I'm ready for my weft lines. So I'm going to take some interesting, this is just marbled paper that I have from somebody's gift or some sort of tissue paper. It's really light. And if you remember last week when we were weaving, we were going over, under, over, under. So I'm going to do the same process again. And if it's a little challenging, you can always skip 1 or 2 of them. So I'm going to go under and kind of almost like dive in and out. So I'm going over now, under, pulling it through, over, under. And I'm gonna kind of, falling apart here. And I'm gonna kind of take my hands and push that. So I want it to be crinkly and have texture to it. Next one, I'm gonna go with one of those garbage bags that I cut up. So I cut from the handle. So I'm gonna start over, under, over, now under, over, and then I'm pulling it again. So it's gonna have texture. One of the things I did was I cut up a photograph that I created, and I had made a printout. So you might find that you have magazines or something fun like printouts, old drawings work, kind of the same way we worked last week. Ooh, that one is in my way. So I've got the over under. If your loom starts to move on you, you just want to make sure to correct that before you get too far ahead of yourself. And let me see, I'm gonna go with under, over, and every so often I'm just gonna check to make sure that they're sort of locked in place by pushing it up against whatever piece was next to it. So now under, over, and then I'm gonna go a little faster too, right? So I'm always weaving in and out, pushing it into place. I try to find colors that work together that I think, so if I have some sort of teal in here or green, I try to use green somewhere else. So I'm over, I go under, over, and because I know I'm going to use my paintbrushes again, I'm not too worried about, you know, I'm just going to take a photo of this later and just document it that way and then pull all the materials out. So it's kind of just a playful way to experiment with weaving. So I was over, I'm going to start under, so over, under. So remember when we were weaving last week, you should see if I'm using certain materials. So maybe I'm seeing marbled paper, the t-shirt yarn, marbled paper, the t-shirt yarn, marbled paper. And if I see too much, chances are I probably accidentally skipped one of my sections that I'm supposed to be weaving. So now I'm gonna go over. And I can lift every other one like I did in the last weaving project. Pull it all the way through. And you may look at this and decide it needs one more piece. You may look at this and think, oh, you know what? Like I could add 2 more pieces. Just move this over. When you're finished, upload, photograph and upload an image of your final product to the weaving section of the enrichment folder under art. One of the things I would say is if you are going to finish off, so here's mine, and all I need to do is really just, like if I wanted to display it, and I was done with my paintbrushes, I didn't want to use my paintbrushes anymore, I could pretty much just hang it on the wall as is, maybe cut off some areas or tie things and tuck things back so it's not necessarily hanging out. Some people in weaving like this raw edge. They like when things are not necessarily finished looking. There's sort of a movement of people that just love like the texture and how that looks. So there's no right or wrong in that. So if you would like to do that, leave it that way. You can always trim these off later on too if you want them to be kind of locked in place with a knot. But I'm gonna leave mine like this just because I know I'm gonna use my paintbrushes again. So I'm just gonna photograph this. So play around with different textures and different materials. Perhaps think about colors and how colors work with each other. Like I said, please upload your image to the enrichment folder. I would love to start compiling some of the weavings over the last couple of weeks. I've started working on the Georgia O'Keeffe enrichment, and now I'm thinking about just making pretty much a very large virtual art show. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm excited to share a few more weavings that I'm going to work on this week with you. Please make sure that you are doing something creative every day, keeping yourself healthy and well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.